We're going to get a chance to talk a little bit about the group that's come here and spent the weekend with us. This has been a great weekend in spite of the rain. I see lots of familiar faces, and I know you made lots of all the talks and that, and as far as I'm concerned, boy, that was great. I'm going to take a week or so to digest everything I heard, so there's some great things there. So we want to really thank our reenactors, but we're going to make them work one last time before we actually thank them for coming in. So again, we had three factions here. We had the British, we had the French, and we had the Native Americans. And each one of these groups of people are, like we said to you, very good living history historians, and if you've had a chance to meet and talk with them at their camps, I hope you've got some information from them. They really lived this. They were here, early, and we actually went up and had another float. So we had actually they were on the creek again here today. So they've had kind of a long day. So, without further ado, Dick is here. Rupp is here from the Living History group, and we're going to kind of let him be the moderator here, so we're going to let him kind of get started, and I'll give you a hand when you need something.
Welcome. Well, instead of shooting each other back in the woods, we're going to try to show the living history hobby, if you will. All of us are interested in history for one reason or another, and we've decided to take it a step further and figure out maybe how they looked and dressed and acted, and they actually presented themselves back in the 1750s, somewhere in there. That's all right. Here we go. I broke that too. They didn't have these back in 1750. Myself, I'm the chairman of the French Creek Living History Association. Big title for a group of people who are just trying to work together to put on events like this. I'm in a civilian outfit. I've got the breeches. I've got shoes with buckles. I'm carrying a haversack. I don't have any pockets in my clothes. Pockets took too much material. They did pockets in clothes didn't come about till a few years later. So we carried a haversack or a possibles bag because you put everything possible in it. And I'm carrying a sword, a gentleman's hunting sword, just for my protection from some of these natives are kind of looking strange to me. And I got Brits and I got Frenchmen. I don't know if they're going to fight in front of me here, so we'll see. I'd like to start out with who have I got? I got here. See who have I got? How about some of my natives? Could some of my natives come on up, please? Now remember, these people spend their own money, get their own equipment, and they. If you were here earlier, they even floated down on the canoe to the landing down here and came in by canoe. Do you want to tell them who you are and what who wants to talk?
I'm speaking to you in Shawnee. It is not my blood heritage. I will tell you that right now. However, it is my family heritage. My family was taken up in a raid in 1764. It was called the Second Kerr Creek Massacre. The Shawnee, led by a white man, came through the valley near Stanton, Virginia. They killed my ancestor. They took his son, his stepdaughter, and their Negro, and took the spoils of the whole valley, along with several people, and headed into what is now West Virginia. I didn't get into reenacting to do that. I had been reenacting for a while and wanted to know, where was my family during all of this? I'm not sure if this is art imitating life or life imitating art, but I'm definitely sure that my family was involved in everything that was going on at that time. I played the what if. My family did get back to European society before they had been integrated into the Native society. But that wasn't true for so many people. And that's the part that I talk about. Captive stories are as diverse today, back then, as adoption stories are today. There's the good, there's the bad, there's the ugly, and everything in between. So I like to show the backstory to a lot of these fancy battles that the guys get to play in. You won't see me there. That's not what I do. The Native women were in support of a lot of these, and yes, every once in a while there was a Native woman who fought. But by and large, we kept the home fires going. And so I talk about the material culture of the Native peoples of that time as best I can. I am not educated like all of the wonderful speakers that have presented today, but my heart is in it. My heart is in it. I try to, like I say, I stick to the material culture. I can tell you about the bowls that were being made, the fans that were being used, some of the food that was being grown and collected. And we spend a lot of time creating the things that we use to show you a little bit of this history. My name is Elizabeth Huxford. I'm from the Panhandle of Maryland, the Western Panhandle. And Dennis, my counterpart here, has come way further than I did. So,
my name is Dennis McKinney. Wapanahin maliki isko kulamasiha. Like wishing it to all right. I am of heritage of Lenape. Okay, that does not make me a Lenape. Okay. My heritage is so far back that there's not enough blood left to count in any way, form, or shape, and I do not consider myself a Lenape. I am a Native American reenactor. Excuse me. I can tell you about the history of the Lenape people in the years coming into the French and Indian War. What I cannot tell you about is the trials and tribulations that these people have gone through since leaving Pennsylvania or in the Ohio Valley and moving out west. Okay? Spent countless hours doing research, as you heard, learning language, researching the tactics and the cultural history of the people of that time period. All right? I'd be more than happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Okay, any questions we want to ask here?
Where did you learn the language? How did you go about it?
I had to do what most people do today is research on the computer, research libraries, talk to different people, and what I've endeavored to do is to learn the language as it was spoken during the French and Indian War. I don't know if I fully accomplished it. The Lenape language is a threatened language right now. There are few people that speak it, and even fewer people that speak it in the old form. So it's an ongoing project, still a lot of research, a lot of work trying to find out what is correct, what is not correct, just simply how to pronounce a word. It can take a week or 2 weeks of research just to work on that.
Well, how about a round of applause for our natives? I've got a British grenadier over here. If he can come up. Suddenly, at this event, this gentleman showed up as a British grenadier, and when I met him years ago, he was a Frenchman. And, I don't know what happened. Maybe he can tell you. You want to tell him about your uniform, Jim Brown?
Yeah, I did French Marine for 22 years, so I figured I'd mix it up a little bit and go to the dark side of the side, see what it's like through their eyes. But dressed as 44th Grenadier, they were with Braddock on Bragg's expedition when they tried to take Fort Duquesne from the French. And so they were regular troops. They came over, it was the 44th and 48th with Braddock, and this advance guard had 100 grenadiers, and when they ran into the French, the Indians were with the French. They flanked the British on both sides of the road and used the woods for cover. And within minutes, 100 grenadiers, there was only 11 left standing, so they got decimated by the Indians using the cover the woods for using the woods for cover. But I have it's called a Brown Vest 77 caliber, and shoots about an ounce of lead out of it. It's basically a smooth bore shotgun. It's the weapon of the British infantry at the time. Probably 3 shots a minute if you're a good musket loader. You know, the linear tactics back then were these muskets weren't the most accurate weapons, so they march within close distances, linear tactics facing each other and fire volleys, and whoever could load the quickest usually won the battle.
Any questions about a British Grenadier? You got more? Okay, stay up here. Don't give it.
The significance of that hat, I
Yes,
wouldn't
sir.
want to go to battle with a big hat like that. Kind
You know, one of
of
the mercenaries from Germany.
Well, the Grenadiers, they were the kind of the elite troops of the British Army, the crack troops, but they were from the biggest and best soldiers that they had. And,
Hey, you got to remember the tactics back then in Europe. They had their battles on big open fields, and they'd have hundreds of guys in line facing each other, and they marched towards each other, and they wouldn't even fire until they got very close to each other because of the muskets weren't that accurate. And 100 guys his height, and with that bright, they figured they'd put the fear into the enemy. And because the average height of a man back then was like 5'3", 5'4", he wasn't very big. And so if they found all these big guys, and then they made him look taller with the hat, it was kind of scare tactics, really. But as he said, the Native Americans didn't fight by those rules. They hid behind trees, they'd shoot at you and run away, and
I have a uniform jacket that I wear over this, but it's a little too humid today.
Yeah.
Sweating as it is, so kind of like the Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies.
but again, he spent all his own money just to try to give you a picture of what the Brits might look like. He'll come back later to shoot his musket here. He likes to do that too. That's the other thing. I got some Rangers over here, don't I?
Yes, you do. Sir.
How about some of you Rangers coming up and tell us what they're raging?
Company, order, Barlow. Company, forward march. Oh, to the left, face. Forward march.
We're not here. Yeah.
Halt. To the right, face. My name's Tom Flegensmith. We are subjects of the British Crown, although we weren't born in England. We live here, not here exactly, until 1768. It was illegal to live west of the Allegheny Mountains. This was disputed territory. The French claimed it, the British claimed it, and of course the Indians lived here. But we are employed by the British as scouts, drovers, whatever our experience may be. Remember, they came from Europe. They don't know this country. They don't know the people, or the terrain, climate, or anything. But we live here, west or east of the Alleghenies. So we know this area, even though it wasn't legal to be here. Many of us have crossed the mountains. We know some of the settlements that are here, mostly trading posts, military posts, that sort of thing. and we are required to defend those posts. We are not professional soldiers. Everybody's dressed differently. It's just whatever we own. We don't have a standard arm. While the military forces all had standard uniforms, standard arms, we do not. It's just whatever we may use on our farm or in our profession. I happen to have a French gun. This is 1728 Charleville. It's the standard arm of the French Army. This is what my opponents, the French, would be carrying. Now, I would get this arm through a Frenchman who didn't need it anymore, or by trade or something. We have fowlers here. This is probably as an English fowler. These are smooth bores. They load quickly. This was a civilian arm right here. Had many uses. It could be not only used in big game or in war, but you can also load it with shot, use it as a shotgun. So she can use this to shoot small game to feed her, or she can carry it in a conflict. Okay, another fowler here. American fowler.
Differences in the slots. 62 caliber. Again, I could use a solid shot to take down a large animal or a human being, or use buckshot in to take small game, or use buckshot against a human. Also could put buck and ball in. So I could put one solid shot of a 62 caliber ball and 3 32 caliber round balls.
Okay.
Rifle is a transitional piece. I don't know if you've noticed some of the Jaegers are very short, heavy arms, very large bore. This is 50 caliber. They've reduced the bore and lengthened the thing. It has the clubby stock yet, very heavy piece, but it is a rifle. It does have rifling. You load it with a patch, ram the ball down here. I cannot shoot accurately anything else out of this other than a round ball that's patched. Drive it home. Like I said, it's very heavy and clunky. It's used to pick off officers and other essential people.
I'm ready.
This is a shorter than usual French trade gun. You notice the roundness of the stock as opposed to the angular lines of the British weapons. It's 62 caliber. It will shoot a 5.7 round ball, or I can use buckshot for in a nasty mood. I've used buck and ball. At 90 feet, it will hold a pattern about yay big. At 90 feet, with 8 buckshot, it'll hold a nice pattern about like that. So they're nice, pretty rows. You can tattoo them.
Very well.
Yeah, and the man with the rifle here, he couldn't load as fast as his men without the rifle, but he could shoot a longer distance. So the rifleman, as he said, would be picking off people from farther away, and the muskets were almost don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes. That's probably close enough you might hit them.
The effective range of a smooth bore ranges between 60 and 80 yards, depending on just how conscientious and skilled the barrel maker was. The rifle, on the other hand, you could expect to hit a man-sized target at 200 yards. The big advantage, my friend Joe here, would take maybe a minute to load, whereas if I was in practice and in the military, I'd be expected to load and fire this 3 times in 1 minute. As people are hunting with them, you load it, then you prime it. The standard for military loading, you have it in half cock. You prime it, you take your cartridge out, you tear it off, you prime your pan, close it, pour your powder down, and the rest of the paper cartridge with the ball in it, you put in the barrel, push it home, when the command was made ready, you would bring it to full cock, take aim, and fire. As opposed to measuring, pulling out a powder measure, pouring your powder measure, pouring it in the barrel, taking a greased cloth, putting it over. Sometimes they carried balls in their mouth. They found in graves people with the musket ball still in their mouth. You get the ball out, push in, cut the pads off, and you push that on. Also, Joe, if he was using a patched ball, would find it exceedingly difficult to reload after 5 shots. And after 6 or 7, you'd probably break his ramrod trying to get it down unless you cleaned it. With a greased patch and a smooth bore, I can expect to get 30 shots off before I have to clean it.
Any questions for the Rangers? Yeah, we got one back there.
Did they actually plate their rifles? Were they actually silver plated or chrome plated or not chrome? Obviously, but
In the military,
This time the barrel will be wrought iron.
in the military, we're required to polish theirs in the regular armies, both the French and British. By the time they got to us, we didn't fall under their regulations. And also, we found it advantageous not to have anything shiny, bright, around the woods. In this area, our adversaries at the time were not only French, but the natives. The natives were very adept in moving through the woods, being quiet, and we tried to adapt those ways as much as we could. Now, we were not professional soldiers, but we were required to know the drills, so if we're serving alongside the British, we have to know their commands. One thing that they had us do is there was a procedure for checking the rifles to see if they were, make sure they're clean, make sure they're unloaded. We had to do this before battle as a routine thing, and not only the British had to do it, but we were required to do it ourselves too, which I can demonstrate.
Yeah, go ahead. Make it quick one.
The company order firelocks. Poise, firelocks. I'm going to go by and inspect, visually inspect everyone, make sure they're on half cock, make sure the flints are tight, make sure it's all in good working order. They all seem to be in good order. Next, I would say, company, search firelocks. Now they're going to draw their ramrod out, insert it in the barrel, and I'm going to walk by. Now, if this gun is unloaded and he drops that, I would hear a sharp sound compared to if it was loaded, it would be a very dull sound. I'm listening for that sound. I know that they're all unloaded. Company, withdraw, ramrods. Company, poise your firelock. Company, hang your firelock. Now the entire, they're all on half cock. The entire weight of the gun is on their, hanging on their thumb right now. That is to check the half cock position, which is a safety position. But the gun's not trying to go off. I know that that gun is safe to use. Company, poise firelocks. Shoulder your firelock. Company, quarter firelocks. So now I know they're ready to go into battle. Their guns are ready. They are ready. These are some of the things we're required to know as subjects of the Crown, but not professional soldiers.
All right, that's the Rangers. Let's hear it for them.
To the right, face. Forward, march. Company, halt. To the right, face. Forward, march, halt. To the right, about, face.
They were British. What am I going to say about them? I see down here, I see some French Marines. I think I see a young George Washington too. Could I get some French Marines up here? And George, you want to come too? Okay, now we're getting Now we're getting to the French who, for this area, these French troops on either side were the French Marines that were at Fort LaBeouf. They were at yeah, this looks fine. So right here in Cockerton, it would freely you would see the French Marines, and you can tell they're French Marines. They have blue and white wool, purity, the wool, and they have a outer coat they don't have on right now, another wool white coat with blue facings. You want to describe anything about your uniform and what you do?
With the French Marines, we was just basically stationed on ships and stuff, and then over here in the colonies and stuff. But we also carry an anchor on the turnbacks on our coats. And that, this is a Justicord, it's a great coat. It's unlined. The blue coat I have is laying over there in the chair, but it's a shorter coat, more like a waistcoat, and it's just too hot to have them both on. Yeah. So, and we had canvas gaiters preferred over top the wool gaiters or leggings that they had. There's reports where they'd get new gaiters, and within a matter of 3 weeks they'd be shredded, just because everything was, you know, the forest was virgin forest, but there was a multiple layers, the brush and everything to get through the game trails or the water ways were your only means of travel and stuff. Okay. The weapon is a Thule.
All right, he's got a French Thule.
It was made as a 69 caliber. It's a little bit smaller in diameter than what the Brown Beth is, the British counterpart and stuff. But basically, it loads the same. There's minor differences. You know, would have had this or would have had the Charlottesville, which is still a 69 caliber and stuff. And the model of the Charlottesville was carried out through the Civil War and stuff.
Right, all the way through the War, 1812, all the way to the Civil War.
Yeah, and everything.
The other thing I think I point out for him, when he came over here, he had a sword here. And he found out that sword wasn't a better implement in the woods was a hawk. So he took away his sword and ended up with a hawk, which was much more useful to him. And then he has a bayonet also. And then his cartridges are kept in a cartridge box. They're all pre-made. All the military has a pre-made cartridge box.
They're just a paper tube. They're rolled up. They roll the tube. They put the ball at the bottom, and then the powder on top. So when you went to load, you just bite it off, spit out. You'd prime your pan first on the side, okay? And you'd close it, you'd spin your gun around, you'd dump the powder in, the ball would go on top, and then the paper, as far as the wadding, on top of that. So you have a 64 caliber ball coming out of a 69 caliber hole with no wadding, it just bounced. With a lot of the formal battles, especially in Europe, Britain was de-forced. I'm not sure about France or anything, but the French over here lived and adapted to the Indians' type of warfare and stuff. A lot more. They still did fight in formal lines, but it was just a matter of speed and to get the shot up. And if you did shoot in volleys, you were shoulder to shoulder. The guns were not accurate, especially with loading it like that. You know, if you went low, you know, you went too low, you got the ground. A lot of times the bullet would ricochet, come back and hit them. So, and if you went high, you usually shot lower. If it went high, it would graze, it'd get them in the chest and stuff. I'm not sure what the mortality rate was during the French and Indian War, but 28 years later in the Revolutionary War, there's about 2% chance of being killed outright on the battlefield. You had a 7 times greater chance of dying once you got wounded and the surgeons got a hold of you. If they did not understand anything about infections, if they was amputate people's arms, legs, whatever, they just went down the line, same saw, same knife, just, you know, and I talked to a surgeon, and they pretty much do it identical today, is what they did. The one surgeon that I talked to, he said probably the biggest mistake they did in this time period was that they bound the wound too tight to where it couldn't bleed and self-clean and stuff. And they knew nothing about bacteria during this period. So, you know.
Okay, so this is a French Marine. He's multiplied many times. He's up in Fort LaBeouf, he's up at Fort Presque, he's down at Fort Michaud in Franklin, he's down at Fort Duquesne at where Fort Pitt is now. So it's all French now, except there was a young interloper that was sent by the British to deliver a message to Fort LaBeouf. And I think the message said something about the British taking over and the French to get out. Do you want to describe your trip? And
yeah, basically the young George Washington was 21 years of age at the time when he traveled almost 500 miles from Williamsburg, Virginia up to Fort LaBeouf in where it is now Waterford, Pennsylvania on French Creek. And what I'm representing is basically wearing the provincial uniform of an officer in the Virginia militia that would probably at least was a replica of what he probably would earn in 1753 and also in late summer of 1754 when actually had an altercation there with in the Glen here at Jumonville and also at Fort Necessity there in early July. Basically what I'm wearing is basically, they were issued, at least the colony of Virginia was, we're told that all the officers and also hopefully some of the men could wear coats made of red cloth and also red breeches. And it turned out that a lot of the men that were hired in as far as privates and different soldiers couldn't afford the money even just to buy their own cloth through that because it was taken out of their pay. Their actual pay that was 8 pence per day, which was about 8 cents back then. So as far as the cost of cloth and just joining in there, it probably wasn't worth it. So a lot of the Virginia soldiers either maybe had a red coat or maybe didn't. But for the officers, they had to know so they could know who was in charge. So with George Washington, he would wear a red officer's jacket, have it sort of decorated in lace, sort of some like fancy gilded buttons. Would also wear like a red waistcoat underneath as well. That sort of didn't have sleeves. It was sort of like a vest. And then he wore the coat over it. He also would wear a sash, sort of a dictate, like his gorget, the metal thing hanging here, it's silver. It not only had it had the coat of arms of Great Britain and basically represented that he was sort of the officer on duty for the day or basically a man of importance. And on that trip, that specific trip in 1753, from October 1753 to almost January of 1754, he was sort of an emissary or diplomat. So in order to do that, this would have been the formal attire that he would have worn had he greeted the French general that day on December the 11th, 1753. He wouldn't have probably worn this the whole way up, mainly because if you notice, red sticks out pretty good in the wilderness and woods and everything, especially when it snows. But basically, Washington would have probably worn riding boots. He did change later on, coming on the way back. He did change what he called his dress like an Indian, wearing moccasins and leggings. But he did wear riding boots as far as before he came up, finding out that maybe those weren't the most comfortable thing to do when you're riding almost 500 miles or walking or however which way you're getting up there to the French fort. And he also, the one thing known too is we always get it, especially when I portray Washington, is everybody always asks, where's Washington's white hair? As if Washington had white hair since he was born, you know, compared to the portraits and stuff we see. But a younger Washington, I basically based the research on they actually have a hair sample at Mount Vernon at his home there outside of DC, saying that his hair was about an auburn or a reddish brown, as far as what they dictated to be when he was younger. So that way people could realize that, you know, and Washington never wore a wig, so it was his whole life, he had the hair the whole time. So it was, if you see white hair in a picture or whatever, usually the most famous ones in the portraits, that was his original hair. It just was decorated enough that it almost looked like a wig. So.
Any questions for George? Yes.
I was just wondering.
Yes.
Did they have two different uniforms, like a winter weight and a summer weight, or did they have to wear the winter weight the whole time?
Basically, you wore it the same time. I mean, some of the officers might have, but as far as the regular, you know, private soldiers would have just had the same. So if you're wearing wool in the winter, you would have been wearing it now. So they might have maybe gone down to short clothes, maybe taken off the coat, but 9 chances out of 10, they probably weren't allowed to do that. So it was mostly, unless they were working or something or building something. So they would have had to suffer, especially like a day like today, you know.
And the books say when you sweat through the wool clothing, it wicks off and cools you. Being part of this hobby for years, it'll work.
Okay, how about a round of applause for my Frenchman? And for George Washington, young George. I've got a coureur de bois, a half native. He lives in the woods. He kind of trades with the white man and the natives. You want to yell out what you got?
Yeah.
What kind of weapon you got?
This is, as we already talked about, the French tooling. Tooling means in France, gun of the hunt, I believe is the proper term. I say, you got a tooling or you have a gun of the hunt. Very convenient because it was like they mentioned earlier, you can shoot a round ball, you can shoot park shot, you can shoot a combination of both. You can hunt small game, you can hunt big game, you can hunt humans, you can hunt anything that you needed to hunt with an all-around type of gun like this. A lot of times there was a lot of French civilians here before all this began to come about. They were the first ones to enter the area. They intermingled with a lot of the tribes. A lot of them took Indian wives, they raised Indian children, which of course were half-breeds, and they all grew up. They stayed in the area until they were pushed out by the British when they first come through this area. The big clash that happened. Now, a lot of people wonder, well, how did we communicate between two people? How did the people in Fort LaBeouf communicate with people in Fort LaBeouf, Michelle, Presque Isle, Pittsburgh, Duquesne, and so forth? They had the coureur de bois, here's your message, away they would go. They would travel that whole area because they knew the area, they'd been living there for years. Their parents were probably half Indian, or they were Indian, and half in whatever they were grown. They were raised that way. They were basically French Indians. They would there was no cell phones, you could not text Washington down. Okay, here they go. We got to get messengers back and forth, and those guys would travel or run back and forth, all the shortcuts and how to hide from the enemies that they would encounter. So they were the true, real woodsmen of the time, as far as I'm concerned. And that's what I like to portray. They dressed Indian style, English style, whatever they could get. They needed clothes. There's a dead Englishman, we'll take his stuff. Well, he's not using it anymore either. As an Indian, old guy can use his stuff. So there's a combination of a little bit of everything. I'm just saying that the importance of civilian people, it wasn't just all military, French, British troops marching around fighting each other. There was a lot of individuals involved in the French and the English about fighting each other. A lot of people, when the French first come down French Creek to explore this area, 200 troops, okay? But them 200 troops needed 800 civilians to row their canoes, carry their baggage, hunt for them, supply their food, do all the cooking. No women involved here, so everything was done by the men. The courier de bois did all that for them. So they were just like jack of all trades of the time. So anything that needed done, they were called upon to do. If you could find them, because they were not usually hanging around where the cities and little towns and settlements, trading places were. They were back in the woods with the Indian tribes and stuff.
You can only find them if they wanted to be found.
Wanted to be found, or you heard okay, such and such, you need to send a text down the road here. You're the one that's going to take it because you know the area. So there was a lot of people like that involved.
Yes, you got a question in the back, young lady?
I'm wondering how he's going to get paid. I presume he got paid for his work.
Yeah, no.
That's a good question, though.
Yeah.
Pay was even the uniformed soldiers didn't get paid too well. A lot of them were just happy to have someone that would feed them and give them a uniform and a gun. So yeah, pay for a courier de bois. He might be one of the better paid because he might find a dead body that has things that they don't need anymore, like we've heard before, and he might acquire those things and trade them at the next trading post. That's it.
To him, being paid would be a powder full of corn, maybe a pound or two of lead. That would be more important to him than he had no use for money. There was no way to spend it. Where would he go to spend his money?
Okay, would you like a little round of applause for these reenactors and all? Oh, you have one quick question here.
I just wanted to know, when he said they used, the French needed about 800 men.
Yeah.
Were these men paid or was it forced labor?
Well, it was...
They were working for the king.
Yeah, there was a great allegiance to the king, yeah. Okay, and again, remember, all these folks paid for their own uniforms. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Now we're going to make some noise. Unless there's other questions about why we do this, reenacting stuff and everything. Okay, we're going to be shooting the cannon. Yeah, if you step outside, and he'll go through a live fire, and then right after that, we're going to turn it over to the cannon people, and they're going to show you some bigger booms to prime and load. So we bite the end off of a cartridge, we pour a little powder down in this pan, shut the pan, come up, dump the rest down. He's trying to double load me here. He wants to make a big boom. He doesn't just want to make a... Him and the cannon got a thing going again.
So after you prime the pan, then you put the bullet with the patch down, and then you ram your load down your gun.
Now I want you to imagine 25 to 30 troops across all firing at the same time. Make ready. Fire. That's a big load. You want to do one more? Or is that enough?
Let me do one more.
Well, I will do one more for you, then we'll give it to the cannon. Those the battles were, the warfare in the 1700s in Europe they took place in open fields. So you had 200-300 men across facing each other, firing at each other. Well, when they got over here in the woods, the tactics changed drastically. And actually that's what caused Braddock's defeat, was his army was on a narrow road and he couldn't display his 75 Rangers or Grenadiers across the front. He could only do about 15. So the natives they didn't fight according to Robert's Rules of Order. They went to the side and they didn't stand in front and shoot. They Private load. Are you ready? Make ready. Fire. Okay. All right, Jim, thank you. And we can thank him for giving us a demo here.
Okay, we are French Royal Artillery. We were sent over from France. There was 3 officers and 18 artillerists that came over with General Montcalm in 1756 to help train the colonial cannoneers and bombardiers in the use of the artillery. Unlike the rest of the soldiers you see in there today, my king expects me to wear my full uniform whenever I'm on duty. So I do have both of my coats on right now. 2 wool coats, long sleeves, fully dressed in our uniforms. We're going to keep this kind of short and sweet because we don't want to stand out here in the sun anymore, and you guys want to hear the gun go off more than hear me talk. So that's what we're going to do, is go through the step-by-step loading and firing of a French 3-pound cannon. First, there's a few things we have to do. We have to prepare the gun for fire. We have to clean the gun, make sure there's no obstructions in the barrel before we try and load. First command, we boucher la lumiere. The gunner cleans the vent in the back, runs a brush down through there, make sure there's nothing in there that's clean. So now we've checked the back of the gun, it's clean. Now we have to check to make sure that the barrel is clean, there's no obstructions in it. You never know when it's a little native or a British child might have threw some rocks or something in there to obstruct it. Take this piece here, this worm, run it down the barrel, see if there's anything in there. It feels clean. The next step, and it's very important after you fire the gun to use this part, this is a wet sponge. And what its purpose is to extinguish any embers that might still be in the barrel after the round is fired. In the 18th century, you used a cloth bag filled with gunpowder. That was your cartridge. And of course, it would leave little threads or embers burning in the barrel. So you want to put those embers out before you introduce the next powder charge. That way you don't blow your arm off. So we run the wet sponge down the barrel. Pull it out, do it twice for safety. Now the gun is prepared to be loaded. You get the command for the gunner, Renee la cartouche. The gunner goes back to the cartridge box, gets a round. Nowadays, for safety, we use rounds. There are 6 layers of aluminum foil with powder inside. That way it leaves no smoldering threads or embers inside the barrel. The round is inserted into the muzzle. Push the muzzle the round to the back. You see when you're loading your round, you don't wrap your thumb around your ramrod. So while you're introducing that charge, if it does go off, it'll just shoot the rammer out of your hand. You might lose a finger or 2. And if you have your thumb around the ramrod and it goes off, you might take your arm with it. So that's why whenever you're loading, you don't use your thumbs. So the gun is loaded now. Now we have to arm it to get it ready to fire. The command for that is amorcer. Gunner takes a brass wire, drops it through the punch hole, punches a hole into that cartridge. We take a smaller cartridge, the size of a musket cartridge, and prime that hole, and the back of the gun has a little depression there to hold a little bit of powder so you can hit it with the lens stock. The lens stock is the firing mechanism for the gun. It has low match, cotton cord wrapped in, dipped in potassium nitrate and water. And that's what fires the gun. It really burns really slow. At this point, you might want to cover your ears.
Cover your ears.
Prepare our food. Food.
I heard that.
We'll do it again.
That's
You can imagine all the smoke. We had a whole battery of guns firing at once. The range on this piece is about 900 yards. The gentleman in there with the rifle could hit me at 200 yards, and I'd be firing on him 700 yards away from him, from me, before he could even get close to me. Touché la lumière.
Now no more bullets. Oh no. Oh no.
This time I plan to pull that cartridge out, that foil. This gun sometimes shoots the foil and everything out of it. Now we wet sponge again. Now after we fired the piece, it's a very important part.
I want to pop up in here.
Into the cargoose. Again, the gunner goes back to the cartridge box, gets around. Notice the gunner puts the round in a satchel. That way it's not hit by any musket fire. The enemy doesn't know what you're going to be shooting at them. Into the cartridge box again.
Wait a minute. Yeah, they're not doing it yet.
Yeah, he's getting ready to do it.
Emerson. Arm the piece. Again, punching a hole through the cartridge. Introducing the loose powder. Prepare our food. Food! That's the loading and firing of a French 3-pounder. You get the same rate of fire.
Can I have your attention, please? We're going to do a musket firing right now. Hold your position. We'll do it right by the camera.
Oh, you think she goes oh, they go to fire the musket thing. Right there. The first one I really heard, but the second one I guess I did.
You're right about that after we're loaded.
Okay, we're going to go through the European drill. We're all in line firing. And we showed you earlier that our muskets are safe and ready to fire. Company, to the right about, base. Now I'm going to give the commands for them to load their guns. Now we're just using blanks, there's no ball. That's the only difference between now and then. Company, shoulder your firelocks. Company, prime unload. Now they're going to take a cartridge out. You had to have 2 front teeth to serve in the military. They had to tear the end off, put some in the pan, close the prison, put the remainder, and if it had a ball, stuff it down to be ready. Now when they're done doing this, they will come to the shoulder. That signifies to me that they are ready to fire. Company, hold. I'm just repeating what they did so I can fire too. Company, make ready, Take aim! Get fire! Drive and load! I'm going to do that a second time. Same thing, take your cartridge out, tear it off. Prime the pan. The rest down the barrel. Come to the shoulder when ready. Company, forward, march. Company, hold. Right, ready. Take aim. Get fire. Order, Frank. We're right about pace. And that's how they fought.
Any questions?
Got a question?
No questions? Well, that concludes our demonstrations. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. Next year the timeline moves up slightly to Pontiac's Rebellion. Same troops are back again. Battle sequence. Thank you again for coming.